The rain was relentless, pounding the streets of Portland, Maine. As I sprinted through the storm, my heart racing faster than my feet. I was late, unforgivably late, for my best friend's wedding, and the weight of that failure crushed me more than the soaked tuxedo clinging to my skin. By the time I reached the venue, I feared I'd missed the moment that would define Jalen's life forever. I burst through the doors of the Seaside Inn, dripping wet, my eyes scanning the warmly lit ballroom. Jalen stood at the altar, radiant in his tailored navy suit, his dark skin glowing under the soft chandelier light. His groom, Marcus, beamed beside him, their hands clasped tightly. The vows were already underway, and I froze, guilt anchoring me to the spot. Jalen's eyes flicked toward me, and for a fleeting second, I saw something, relief, maybe, or something deeper, before he turned back to Marcus. I'd known Jalen since we were 12, two misfits in a small coastal town where being different felt like a crime. He was the bold one, the black kid with a laugh that could light up a room, always dragging me into adventures I was too cautious to chase alone. I was Diego, the quiet Latino artist who'd rather sketch the world than live in it. Our friendship was a refuge, a place where we could be ourselves, until life started pulling us apart. Jalen's engagement to Marcus had blindsided me. Not because I didn't like Marcus. He was kind, a lawyer with a sharp wit and a heart as big as Jalen's, but because it forced me to confront feelings I'd buried for years. I loved Jalen, not just as a friend, but in a way that made my chest ache every time he smiled at someone else. I'd never told him. How could I? He was happy, and I wasn't about to ruin that. I slipped into a back pew, trying to blend in with the crowd of joyful guests. The officiant's voice carried over the soft hum of the storm outside. Do you, Jalen Carter, take Marcus Rivera to be your lawfully wedded husband? Jalen's I do was steady, certain, and it cut through me like a blade. I clapped along with everyone else, forcing a smile, but my hands trembled. After the ceremony, the reception spilled into the inn's garden, where fairy lights twinkled against the night sky. The rain had stopped, leaving the air heavy with the scent of wet roses and salt from the nearby ocean. I lingered near the bar, nursing a glass of whiskey, when Jalen found me. Diego, you made it, he said, his voice warm but laced with something I couldn't place. His eyes, usually so bright, held a shadow. Barely, I admitted, forcing a laugh. I'm sorry, man. Got caught in the storm. He waved it off, but his gaze lingered. You're here now. That's what matters. We stood there, the noise of the party fading into the background. I wanted to tell him everything. How I'd spent years loving him in silence. How his happiness was both my joy and my pain. But before I could speak, Marcus called him over for their first dance. Jalen squeezed my shoulder, a touch that lingered a beat too long, and then he was gone, swept into the arms of his new husband. The night wore on, and I tried to lose myself in small talk with Jalen's cousins and Marcus's colleagues. But my eyes kept finding Jalen, laughing, dancing, glowing. Each moment felt like a goodbye to the version of us that had once been everything. By midnight, I was ready to slip away, my heart too heavy to keep pretending. I stepped outside to the garden, the cool night air a relief against my flushed skin. The stars were out now, scattered like diamonds across the sky. I sat on a wooden bench, sketching absently in the small notebook I always carried, trying to capture the ache in my chest. Diego! Jalen's voice startled me. He stood a few feet away, his tie loosened, his expression unreadable. You're hiding. Just needed some air, I said, closing my notebook. Big night for you. He sat beside me, closer than necessary, his knee brushing mine. Yeah, biggest night of my life. He paused, staring at the stars. But it doesn't feel complete. I frowned, my pulse quickening. What do you mean? He turned to me, his eyes searching mine. You've always been my anchor, Diego. Through everything, my dad leaving, the bullying, figuring out who I am. I thought getting married would feel like the end of a chapter, but it just makes me realize how much I need you in the next one. His words hit me like a wave, stirring up emotions I'd fought to keep buried. Jalen, you've got Marcus now. You don't need me like that anymore. That's where you're wrong, he said softly. He reached for my hand, his fingers warm and steady against mine. I've always needed you, more than you know. My breath caught. The world seemed to shrink to just us, the garden, the stars. I wanted to pull away, to protect myself from the hope rising in my chest. But I couldn't. Not when he was looking at me like that. Jalen, don't, I whispered. You're married now. I know, he said, his voice breaking. But I can't pretend anymore. I've been in love with you since we were kids, Diego. I thought I could move on, but I can't. The confession hung between us, heavy and electric. I stared at him, my heart pounding, torn between joy and fear. He loved me. He'd always loved me. But what did that mean now, on the night he'd vowed to love someone else? Before I could respond, Marcus's voice called from the inn, breaking the spell. Jalen let go of my hand, his face a mask of conflict. I'm sorry, he whispered, standing. I shouldn't have said that. He walked away, leaving me on the bench, my sketchbook trembling in my hands. I opened it to the page I'd been drawing. A sketch of Jalen, his eyes full of the love he'd just confessed. But now, that love felt like a wound, one I wasn't sure could ever heal. The days after Jalen's wedding were a blur of avoidance and ache. I threw myself into my work, sketching murals for a community center in downtown Portland, hoping the grind of paint and deadlines would drown out his words. I've been in love with you since we were kids. They echoed in my mind, relentless, each syllable a spark that threatened to ignite everything I tried to suppress. I avoided Jalen's calls, his texts, the little coffee shop on Commercial Street where we used to meet. Portland's cobblestone streets and salty air, once a comfort, now felt like a maze closing in. I couldn't face him. Not after he'd torn open a truth I wasn't ready to confront. He was married. He'd made his choice. So why had he said those words? Why had he looked at me like I was the one he'd been searching for all along? A week later, I couldn't dodge him anymore. Jalen showed up at my apartment, a converted loft above a bookstore in the old port. He stood in the doorway, his navy jacket speckled with rain, his eyes tired but determined. We need to talk, Diego, he said, his voice low, almost pleading. I let him in, my heart thudding. The loft was a mess. Sketchbooks scattered across the coffee table, paint cans stacked in the corner, but Jalen didn't seem to notice. He sat on the edge of my worn leather couch, hands clasped tightly, like he was holding himself together. I messed up, he started, staring at the floor. What I said at the wedding, I shouldn't have put that on you. Not like that. I leaned against the counter, arms crossed, trying to keep my voice steady. Then why did you? You're married, Jalen. You can't just drop something like that and expect me to know what to do with it. He looked up, his eyes raw. Because I was scared. Scared that if I didn't say it then, I'd lose you forever. Marcus is amazing, Diego. He's everything I thought I wanted. But when I saw you at the wedding, soaked and late and still showing up for me, it hit me. You've always been there. And I've always loved you. I turned away, my throat tight. Don't do this. Don't make me the reason your marriage falls apart. I'm not, he said quickly. I'm not asking you to fix this. I needed you to know. I couldn't keep pretending. The air between us crackled with unspoken questions. What did he want? What did I want? I'd spent years convincing myself my feelings for Jalen were a dead end, a fantasy I could sketch away in my notebooks. But now, with him sitting there vulnerable and real, I wasn't so sure. Jalen, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I've loved you since we were 14. That summer at the lighthouse when you dared me to climb the rocks and I fell, and you carried me all the way home. I knew then, but I never said anything because I didn't want to lose you. His face softened, a mix of relief and pain. He stood, closing the distance between us, but stopped short of touching me. We're idiots, aren't we? Loving each other all this time and never saying a word. I laughed, a brittle sound. Yeah, pretty stupid. For a moment we just stood there, the weight of our shared history filling the room. Then he reached out, his hand brushing my arm, and I felt the same spark I'd felt in the garden. But this time I stepped back. You're married, I said again, the words a shield, and I can't be the guy who breaks that. Jalen nodded, his jaw tight. I know. I don't know how to do this without you. You don't have to, I said, my voice cracking. I'm still your best friend. But we can't be more than that. Not now. He left soon after, promising to give me space. But as the door closed behind him, I sank to the floor, my sketchbook open to a half-finished drawing of us as kids, laughing under the lighthouse. I didn't know how to be just his friend anymore. Not when I knew he felt the same way. The next few weeks were torture. Jalen and Marcus settled into their new life, posting photos of their honeymoon in Acadia National Park, their smiles bright but distant. I threw myself into my art, painting a mural of the Maine coastline, all jagged cliffs and stormy seas, pouring my confusion into every stroke. But Jalen's confession lingered, a wound that wouldn't close. One night, I got a call from Marcus. His voice was calm but strained. Diego, can we meet? There's something I need to talk about. My stomach dropped. Did he know? Had Jalen told him? I agreed to meet at a quiet diner on Congress Street, my nerves fraying with every step. Marcus was already there, his dark hair neatly combed, his lawyer's composure intact but fragile. Diego, he said as I slid into the booth, I know something's going on with you and Jalen. He's been different since the wedding, distant, and I think I know why. I froze, my heart pounding. Marcus, He held up a hand, his eyes kind but firm. Let me finish. I love Jalen, more than anything, but I've seen the way he looks at you, and I've seen the way you look at him. I'm not blind. I wanted to deny it, to protect Jalen, to protect whatever fragile balance we'd all found. But Marcus's gaze held me in place, demanding the truth. The diner's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows across Marcus's face. His words hung in the air, heavy with accusation and something else, resignation maybe. I gripped my coffee mug, the ceramic burning my palms, searching for a way to respond without breaking everything apart. Marcus, I said finally, my voice low. I'd never do anything to hurt you or Jalen. What happened at the wedding, it was a mistake. A moment. It won't happen again. He leaned back, his eyes studying me. I believe you mean that, but it doesn't change what I see. Jalen's torn, Diego, and I think you are too. I wanted to argue, to tell him he was wrong, but the truth was a weight I couldn't shake. Marcus deserved honesty, but how could I give it without betraying Jalen? Or myself? I don't know what to say. I admitted. I care about Jalen. Always have. But I respect what you two have. I'm not here to mess that up. Marcus nodded, but his expression was guarded. I'm not asking you to disappear. Jalen needs you in his life. I get that, but I need to know where we all stand. Because I can't build a marriage on half-truths. His words cut deep, not because they were cruel, but because they were fair. Marcus wasn't the villain here. He was a man fighting for his future, just like I was fighting for my past. We talked for a while longer, skirting the edges of the truth, until he left with a quiet, "Take care, Diego." I sat there alone, the diner's hum fading into the chaos of my thoughts. The next day, I found myself at the community center, staring at the mural I'd been painting. The stormy sea I'd created felt like a mirror of my heart, wild, untamed, crashing against cliffs that refused to yield. I dipped my brush into cobalt blue, trying to lose myself in the work, but Jalen's face kept surfacing in my mind. His confession, his touch, the way he'd looked at me under the stars. I was so lost in thought that I didn't hear the door open behind me. "Diego," Jalen's voice said, soft but urgent. I turned, paintbrush in hand, to find him standing there, his expression a mix of guilt and determination. "You shouldn't be here," I said, setting the brush down. "Marcus called me last night. He knows something's up." Jalen's face fell. "He talked to you? What did he say?" "He's not stupid, Jalen. He sees it. The way you've been acting. The way we've been acting." I gestured between us, my voice rising. "This has to stop. Whatever this is, it's not fair to him." Jalen stepped closer, his eyes pleading. I know it's not fair. But I can't stop feeling this way, Diego. I've tried. God, I've tried." I turned away, my hands shaking. "You think this is easy for me? I've loved you for years, Jalen. Years. But you made a vow. You chose him." "I chose him because I thought I could let you go," he said, his voice breaking. "I thought marrying Marcus would fix me, make me whole. But it didn't. It just made me realize how much I've been lying to myself." His words were a punch to the gut. I wanted to scream, to cry, to pull him into my arms and never let go. But instead, I forced myself to stay still, to keep the distance between us. "You can't do this," I said. "You can't unravel your life because of one moment." "It's not one moment," he said, stepping closer. "It's every moment. Every time we laughed together. Every time you showed up for me. Every time I looked at you and felt like I was home. Diego, I'm not saying I have all the answers. But I can't keep pretending this isn't real." I shook my head, backing away. "You need to figure this out with Marcus. Not me. I'm not your escape hatch." Jalen's face crumpled, but he nodded. "You're right. I need to talk to him. But I'm not giving up on us, Diego. Not yet." He left, and I sank to the floor, surrounded by half-painted waves and the ghost of his words. The mural loomed above me, a reminder of the chaos I couldn't escape. I didn't know what Jalen would say to Marcus, or what it would mean for any of us. But I knew one thing. Our bond, the one I'd thought unbreakable, was changing, and I wasn't sure I could stop it. That night, I walked along the eastern promenade, the ocean stretching out like a dark mirror. Portland's lights twinkled in the distance, a city full of lives moving forward while mine felt stuck. I thought about Jalen and me at 16, sneaking beers on this very trail, dreaming of futures we couldn't yet see. Back then, love was a word we didn't dare speak. Now, it was a word that threatened to rewrite everything. My phone buzzed with a text from Jalen. "Talk to Marcus. It's messy, but we're figuring it out. Can I see you tomorrow?" I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the reply button. Every instinct screamed to say yes, to run to him, to hold on to the love we'd both admitted. But another part of me, the part that had watched him say "I do" to another man, held me back. I typed a single word, "Okay," and hit send, my heart a battlefield of hope and fear. The next morning, I met Jalen at a small cafe overlooking Casco Bay. The sky was gray, heavy with the promise of rain, mirroring the tension between us. He looked exhausted, his usual vibrancy dulled, but his eyes still held that spark that had always drawn me in. "Marcus and I talked all night," he said, stirring his coffee without drinking it. "It was brutal. I told him everything. How I feel about you. How I've always felt." I swallowed hard, my stomach twisting. "And he's hurt," Jalen said, his voice low, angry, but he didn't walk away. "He wants to try to work through it. Counseling, maybe. He says he loves me enough to fight for us." I nodded, unsure what to feel. Relief that Marcus wasn't giving up? Jealousy that he still had a claim to Jalen's heart? Or guilt for being the wedge between them? "That's good, right?" I said, my voice hollow. "You guys can figure it out." Jalen's eyes met mine, sharp and searching. "Is that what you want, Diego? For me to figure it out with him?" I looked away, out at the bay where fishing boats bobbed in the distance. "I want you to be happy, Jalen. That's all I've ever wanted." "But what about you?" he pressed. "What do you want?" The question hit like a tidal wave. I wanted him, his laugh, his warmth, the way he made every moment brighter. But I also wanted him to be honest, to live a life that didn't tear him apart. "I want you to be true to yourself," I said finally. "Whatever that looks like." He reached across the table, his hand hovering near mine but not touching. "I don't know what that looks like yet, but I know I can't lose you. Not as my friend, not as whatever we could be." The words hung there, fragile and dangerous. I wanted to grab them, to hold on to the possibility they offered, but I couldn't shake the image of Marcus's face in the diner, his quiet strength as he fought for his marriage. "You need to figure out what you owe Marcus," I said, "and what you owe yourself. I'll be here, Jalen. But I can't be the answer." He nodded, his jaw tight, and we sat in silence, the weight of our choices pressing down on us. The cafe's chatter faded into the background, and for a moment, it was just us, two boys who'd grown up together, now men navigating a love that didn't fit neatly into anyone's story. Over the next few weeks, Jalen and Marcus went to counseling, and I kept my distance, focusing on my mural and avoiding the places where our lives overlapped. But Jalen's texts came daily. Small updates, apologies, memories of our past. Each one was a thread pulling me back to him, and I hated how much I wanted to follow. One evening, I was at the community center, adding the final touches to the mural. The stormy sea now had a lighthouse, its beam cutting through the darkness, a symbol of hope I wasn't sure I believed in. My phone buzzed, and I saw Marcus's name on the screen. My heart sank as I answered. "Diego, it's over," he said, his voice steady but heavy. "Jalen and I were done. He's moving out." I froze, the paintbrush slipping from my hand. "What? Why?" "He loves you," Marcus said simply. "He tried to make it work with me, but it's you he wants. And I can't keep fighting for someone whose heart is somewhere else." I stammered, trying to find words, but Marcus cut me off. "Don't feel guilty, Diego. This isn't your fault. It's just the truth. Take care of him. Okay?" The call ended, and I stood there, staring at the lighthouse on the mural. My mind raced. Grief for Marcus, shock at the news, and a flicker of hope I was afraid to touch. Jalen was free, but at what cost? And what did it mean for us? I found Jalen that night at the Eastern Promenade, sitting on a bench overlooking the bay. His eyes were red, his shoulders slumped, but when he saw me, he stood, a tentative smile breaking through. "It's really over?" I asked, my voice barely audible over the waves. He nodded. I couldn't keep lying to him, or to myself. "I love you, Diego. I always have." This time, when he reached for my hand, I didn't pull away. His fingers intertwined with mine, warm and steady, and for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. But the weight of Marcus's pain, of the vows broken, lingered between us. "What do we do now?" I asked, my voice trembling. Jalen looked out at the bay, then back at me. "We start over. Together. If you'll have me." The weeks after Jalen's marriage ended were a delicate dance of hope and healing. We didn't rush into anything. Too much had been broken, too many hearts bruised. Instead, we rebuilt our bond slowly, piece by piece, like artists sketching a new future on a canvas scarred by the past. We started with walks along the Portland waterfront, retracing the paths of our childhood. Jalen told me about his counseling sessions, how he'd unraveled years of fear and denial to face his truth. I shared my own struggles, the years I'd spent loving him in silence, sketching him into every corner of my art. Each conversation was a step closer, a bridge over the chasm that had almost swallowed us. One evening, we sat on the same bench in the inn's garden where he'd confessed his love on his wedding night. The roses were still in bloom, their scent mingling with the salt air. The stars above felt like a promise, not a weight. "I'm sorry for the mess I made," Jalen said, his voice soft. "For hurting Marcus, for putting you through this." I took his hand, my thumb tracing circles on his skin. "It wasn't just you. We both held back for too long. But we're here now." He smiled, a real smile, the kind that lit up his eyes like it had when we were kids. "I want to do this right, Diego. No more secrets. No more running." I leaned in, resting my forehead against his, our breaths mingling in the cool night air. "Then let's not run," I said. "Let's build something real." Our first kiss was tentative, a question and an answer all at once. It wasn't the frantic passion of forbidden love, but something deeper, honest, hard won, and full of promise. The garden seemed to hold its breath, the fairy lights casting a soft glow over us, as if the world was finally giving us permission to be. Months later, my mural at the community center was unveiled to a small crowd. The stormy sea, the lighthouse, the stars. They told a story of chaos and hope, of love that endured against the odds. Jalen stood beside me, his hand in mine, as the crowd applauded. Marcus wasn't there, but I'd heard he was doing okay, starting fresh in Boston. I hoped he'd find the happiness he deserved. Jalen and I moved in together that spring, into a small apartment overlooking the bay. It wasn't perfect. There were arguments, doubts, moments when the weight of our past threatened to pull us under. But we faced them together, learning to love not just as friends, but as partners, building a life that honored both our history and our future. One night, as we lay in bed, the sound of waves drifting through the open window, Jalen turned to me. "You know," he said, his voice warm with sleep, "that night at the wedding, when I told you I loved you, it changed everything." I smiled, pulling him closer. "Yeah, it broke us apart, and then it brought us back together." He kissed my forehead, a soft promise. "Forever this time." And as I drifted to sleep, his heartbeat steady against mine. I knew he was right. Our bond had been tested, shattered, and rebuilt, stronger than ever. It wasn't a fairy tale, it was messy, human, real. But it was ours, and that was enough.